Hello and welcome back to home Zomewhere Else. We will be completing this update today. And if you recall, what happened in the previous update is that we found out that Mom is actually Bruce. Bruce has his own little special grove where he buries the mutated people. And we got a little bit of an explanation as to how Fred's and Mothic's powers work. Not a complete explanation, but at least we know more about what's going on, at least with them two. Hopefully, we will learn more about at least Chad or maybe Bruce's powers, or at least get another explanation that goes into more detail. But yeah, I guess we'll have to find out as we continue this update. Passing through the opening, you find a smaller, though still fairly large clearing, planted in a patch of grassless dirt on a few effigies made of crisp metal and wood, looking like stereotypical training dummies. You figure this is some kind of training area based on the wear and tear of those dummies, as well as the general damage to the surroundings. Bruce is sitting on a wooden bench near the entrance, his eyes closed and his expression somewhat tight. His ears flick in your direction as he hears you approach, looking back over his shoulder at you. Come, make yourself comfortable. You quickly do as he says and move in front of him, sitting down on the grass at his feet. Mothoc follows suit, sitting down next to you and joining you and looking up expectantly at Bruce. All right. After giving it a lot of thought, and also being unceremoniously forced to it, I've decided to teach you how to properly use your powers. Jeez, don't sound so excited about it, or I might just start to worry that you've actually developed a conscience over randomly attacking people. First of all, I'd like to clear the air. If you're expecting an apology, stop holding your breath. I am not sorry for attacking you. I will, however, make the concession that I did not expect an apology in turn for you and the shepherd trespassing on my mountain. I have my reasons, and I am sure that you do yours. And, no, I will not tell you my reasons, so do not waste my time by asking. So, let's just do what needs to be done and get it over with. Do we have an agreement, Doberman? I guess. Good. As for you, Mothoc, I realize that I haven't exactly been fair to you lately, so I'll ask that you pay attention as well, since this is just as important to you. As much as it pains me, yesterday showed me in no uncertain terms that I won't be able to protect you, so I want you to go forward with the proper knowledge of how to defend yourself. Are you okay with that? Mothoc nods firmly, apparently also looking forward to resolving a lot of unanswered questions. Very well. Before Fred can say anything else, Fred finally joins you all, carrying an armful of leaves similar to the ones that he used to make a parachute yesterday. Bruce closes his eyes and takes a deep breath, then slowly lets the air back out. Both of Bruce's whiskers reach out and grab the leaves, with the paws at their tips. Small arcs of blue lightning cackle across the whiskers, static pops echoing through the clearing. In a flash, the leaves are shredded into countless small pieces, which remain floating in place between the whiskers, more arcs jumping between them as they dance aimless patterns in the midair. Before we begin, you need to understand the foundations of life itself, the raw energy that powers our very existence. Mana. The aimless dance of the shredded leaves starts to adopt some sort of choreography, forming into vagueless, person-shaped clusters, almost as if Bruce is using them to draw in the air. The name varies between times, cultures, places, and even individuals. Life energy, ki, chakra, krin, aura. The list goes on, but they're all essentially the same. Mana is the very essence of life itself, and it's impossible to exist without it. While mana flows through everything from the seas to the very air around us, living creatures interact with and subsist off of mana through the structures of the three different aspects. Body, mind, and soul. To qualify as a whole being, a conscious entity, you must possess all three. They might have different balances within you, but you must have all of them regardless. The body, a shell, a base, a vessel, something that acts as the definition of your physical existence. Though it is easy to understand it as your actual physical body, anything made of matter can also act as the body. The mind, The engine of thought, the source of personality, and the medium through which a creature can develop intelligence. That's the container for most of your memories as well. It is what definitely makes you who you are as a person. And lastly, the soul. It is the being's very core and what defines you as you in the rawest form. It is a part of you that converts mana into energy better suited for the mind and body to use. In other words, in its most basic form, mana is too raw and chaotic to be used as energy by your mind and body. The soul tames it, if you will, and makes it usable by the rest of you. Therefore, the soul is effectively the base of the three aspects that the other two spring forth from, and everything with all three aspects has always, without exception, possessed a soul at some point. Are you understanding everything so far? Yes. Good. Don't be afraid to ask questions if you are confused. I'd rather you grasp all of this as efficiently as possible than have to go back over the explanation multiple times. You glance over at Fred after nodding to Bruce, finding him listening intently to Bruce's explanation with a surprisingly intense look on his face. Mothoc is the same, his eyes focused on the tiger. In order to be able to awaken your powers, you must fulfill two requirements in any order. First, you must be consciously aware of those three basic aspects. Specifically, you must know and understand that you possess them. And second, you must be influenced by someone who has the ability to do such a thing. Wait, doesn't that mean that I've been influenced already? But by who and when? Yes, you have already been influenced. Unfortunately, it's essentially impossible to tell who did it, or when it happened. There are ways to vaguely guess who did it based on how your powers manifested, but there is no definitive way to tell. So does that mean that I can influence somebody? Just by, like, passing them on the street or something? Not exactly. First of all, you cannot influence anyone. Only very specific people can, and it is very unlikely that you were influenced by mistake. The process of influencing is different based on the being that's doing it, of course, but generally it is important that it requires a conscious decision by the influencer. And, as far as we're aware, only a certain type of being is capable of doing it, though I suppose that probability of someone or something being able to do it without or knowledge is non-zero. Regardless, it only really matters if the first condition is also met, which by itself is fairly rare and can happen in variable ways. Generally, people know that they have a body and a mind, not a soul. Though people who are religious or just have faith in general, be it in themselves or some higher power, are most likely able to realize that they have a soul. Or at least develop a general understanding of spirituality within themselves that will fulfill the requirement, at least regarding the soul. In other cases, there are people who don't feel like their body is truly theirs, or who feel like they are not fully in control of their own mind. Those are just a few examples, because of all of the numerous definitions, beliefs, and understandings of what each word means, it's fairly unlikely for there to be some sort of outbreak of powers, even if someone is going around influencing people carelessly. But once both of these conditions are fulfilled, whether or not you are aware of them, your power, known as your Zoma, will be unlocked. From that point on, it's up to you to discover what your Zoma actually is. I was lucky enough to get a helpful nudge in the right direction by certain people in the town. Who? I can't say. Why am I not surprised? Well, either way, I've discovered mine by complete accident. That's fairly common. As for Mothoc, he's actually been using it for a while without realizing it, which is another possibility. Mothoc nods. The point being, Doberman, that everyone's experience is different. Some can discover it by complete accident like you. Others can have it come to them naturally, since it's related to something that they do fairly often in their day-to-day lives. There are even some, like Mothoc, who use it without even realizing that they're using it. If they ever realize something is different, they may just attribute it to them becoming quite skilled at that certain thing. On the other side of the coin, discovering it can be quite difficult for some. It's entirely possible for someone to fulfill both conditions, be fully aware of their doing so, and still not be aware of what their abilities are. So then is your Zoma entirely random? Yes and no. Whereas the exact form of the power is wholly impossible to predict until it's discovered by its user, there is a way to make general guesses about how a Zoma will manifest that are more or less accurate. A Zoma is definitely as one particular thing at the moment of influencing, and its basic traits are decidedly joined by the balance of the three aspects in the influenced being, and the elemental affinity of the influencer. Speaking of the three aspects, time to see if you've been paying attention, Doberman. Hmm? Going off everything that's been said so far, what aspect do you think Mothic's Zoma is based on? I'm thinking mind. I mean, he can make people invisible to others, speak directly into their minds, and change how stuff tastes. Or, I guess, change our perception of how it tastes. Correct. Well done. Naturally, a Zoma can be based on more than one aspect, though. Generally, this results in a sliding scale of strength and versatility. For example, a Zoma based entirely on the mind like Mothic's can allow for powerful illusionary capabilities. Conversely, a hypothetically power based on both mind and body might allow its user to communicate telepathically and move things with their mind, but to a lesser degree than if it were just two people who had pure mind like Mothic. And then someone who had pure body, who could perhaps lift thousands of tons with their bare hands. So what do you think this shepherd's Zoma is based on? You look over at Fred, who is staring at you with an eager, expectant grin. Well, since he can create and control plants and stuff, and plants are physically things, he'd be a combination of body and mind? Since I'm assuming it's kind of a telekinesis, like that hypothetical power you just mentioned, you know, all those crazy dance moves he uses to fight. Hey, I'm not dancing! All of my moves are very well Quit whining, Shepard. As for you, Doberman, well, incorrect, it is a good deduction. You're lacking one simple piece of information. The soul also contains your element. Element? You did mention elemental affinity earlier, actually. Yes, there are 6: earth, fire, wind, water, light, and dark. Generally, you're given an element during the process of being influenced, which is where the influencer's element comes into play. It's safe to assume that if you're influenced by someone with a fire element, you'll probably get the fire element too. Now, that's not always the case. Sometimes you wind up with a different element. We're not entirely sure why, though. With that in mind, the shepherd's powers are then based on the body, which you are correct about, and the soul, as the powers driven by earth mana. Ah, alright, that makes sense. Though, now that I'm confused about myself, since I'm pretty sure that my hand doesn't have any element. Not every Zoma is innately attuned to an element. We refer to those as non-elemental or physical, Zoma. However, just because there isn't one doesn't mean that you don't have an element, it's just that it's not being used. That, of course, doesn't mean that you won't ever be able to. It's just that most lack the knowledge and experience at first, or haven't thought creatively enough about how to properly use their Zoma. Though, there are some beings that simply can't apply an element to their Zoma, but that doesn't mean that they're stuck. There are multiple different ways to improve a Zoma beyond elemental imbuement. With enough knowledge and know-how and training, even the simplest Zoma can have a variety of different uses and abilities. Though, like everything I've said so far today, there are exceptions, but they're rare so far. For now, just focus on those fundamental facts. Cool. Hopefully one day I can learn what my element is and use it. Being able to throw fire punches would be so cool. You might very well find out with enough training. For now though, you're getting ahead of yourself. Your utmost priority at this point would be understanding your Zoma, both inside and out. Not knowing what you're even capable of is a surefire way to wind up dead. Once you understand your Zoma on a fundamental level, your possibilities open up and become nearly limitless, depending on your own creativity and determination. The shepherd, for example, started out being barely able to sprout a flower. But through years of training and study, he has managed to convert a very basic concept, that of growing and controlling plants, into a powerful combat style that is both offensive and defensive. And beyond that, as you've already seen, he's even learned how to use it for healing purposes as well, which is but one of the many different uses his powers has or can have. He's a prime example of what you can become when you fully understand what your Zoma can and cannot do. As for you, it's clear to me that, at present, your Zoma is exclusively based on the body, creating a physical object to be used as an extension of your own body. I'd imagine that after some years of training, you could learn to also use the mind, so that your hand moves on its own, acting as an independent third limb. Oh, that sounds cool. I wonder if I can make more of them, or manifest different shapes. Potentially. That will be for you to discover on your own though, since I have no way to directly push your growth in one direction or another. Something to keep in mind though, is that you also need to keep your ambitions about your Zoma in check. Using it isn't free, after all, and it's entirely possible for your ideas to not work at all. How so? Every Zoma, as with everything else about them, has limitations on a case-by-case basis as well. Like me with growing food, or if we go someplace without any good surface for me to grow stuff out of. Exactly, which is why understanding your own Zoma is so important, so that you can know your own limitations and be able to work around them. You might eventually one day figure out how to do a certain thing with your hand, but it's important to weigh the value of the time that you put into it against its versatility. It would be a waste to spend months training a new power that is virtually useless in all but a very niche scenario. There are other basic limitations every Zoma has, in one way or another, as well. Most predominantly, mana consumption, at least for the Zoma that use mana. Your body is constantly drawing in mana, be it from breathing, eating food, or even just ambiently, through your skin. However, the process is gradual, and using a Zoma is not. You will rapidly run your body dry using your Zoma, and though your overall mana reserves can be expanded, similar to growing a muscle, that takes time and ambient mana regeneration is not enough to sustain you in combat. Mana exhaustion is similar to physical exhaustion, but on a deeper scale, and its effects can be much more detrimental to your body. Like normal exhaustion, hearty meals and restful sleep can help restore it quickly, but as the shepherd showed, the needs can be deeper and more demanding. And running dangerously low on mana can be catastrophic, causing permanent, irreversible damage. A body-based Zoma exhausting its mana can lead to disabilities like muscular atrophy or brittle bones. The mind, when exhausted, will become more fragile and unhinged, either erasing your personality or wildly changing it. As for the soul, its ability to absorb mana will be dampened to the point of uselessness, leaving you to slowly waste away to nothing. And should you completely exhaust all the mana in your body, you die. Those two sharp words pierce through you like cold steel, sending a shiver down your spine. It seems like you're not alone as Mothoc nervously looks down at his hands, a bead of sweat dripping down his forehead. Wait, was that why Fred wouldn't wake up this morning? Yes, the shepherd was no doubt close to reaching his limit yesterday, probably both physically and magically, let's say. As all of what we have just learned sinks in, you turn towards Fred, sudden panic racking your body. You didn't go too hard, did you? Fred's eyebrows bounce upwards for a moment before a smirk crosses his lips and he chuckles. Yeah, I did push myself pretty hard yesterday, but don't worry, Chad, I didn't go so far as to cause any damage. Only lasting side effects are that I'm still absolutely starving, and I want to sleep more. It's all good. Phew, good. Bruce huffs a small little half-sigh type thing as he turns his head away. I will say, throwing my pride away for a moment, I am grateful for your help, Shepherd. If you hadn't... He pauses as he notices the wide-eyed stare pointing at him from you and Fred. You both and Mothoc almost died like 40 times yesterday for his sake, and then got dragged out of bed to come save his life while still weak, so it's nice to see all that hard work earning you some well-deserved politeness. But it's still a shock. Fred clears his throat, giving himself a moment to let his brain catch up before shaking his head. No thanks necessary, Bruce. Just, doing my job. Well, either way, that is the extent of the lesson for today. Starting tomorrow, once I'm fully recovered, we'll start your training. Wait, what, me? Yes, Doberman, you. You need to be able to pull your own weight. I didn't agree to explain all of this just because I care about you. It's because I don't want to bury more people in the grove. Oh. Yeah, that sounds more like Bruce. The shepherd also told me of your little predicament. Though what happens beyond the scope of this mountain concerns me little, I at least feel particularly responsible since that lion was apparently looking for me. If you fight again, you will no doubt find yourself a quivering bloody mess on the ground once again, or worse. Wait, did Fred really tell him all those details? So, first thing tomorrow morning, I need you here. Oh, okay. And let's make something clear. I don't like you. I have my reasons, and they are mine alone. But when it comes to Zoma and helping people understand it, I must always make an exception as a sentinel. And I suppose I am indebted to you for looking after and protecting Mothoc. This will wipe that debt clean. Thanks, I guess? I mean, you definitely didn't need to point out that you don't like me, and you're not exactly hiding it. But thank you for explaining all of this. It feels like, for the first time in forever, that I've actually gotten some damn answers. Anyhow, one last thing, though it is quite obvious and I trust that I shouldn't need to remind you further, all of this information is of the utmost confidentiality. And always keep in mind that, if people know that you're influenced, you'll be a target. He points both of his pointer fingers at each of your shoulders, trailing them back and forth across his chest. Which means it's probably a good idea to keep that mark of yours hidden. Mark? Surely you've noticed those lines across your body. Every person with a Zoma has a mark like that, somewhere on their person. Yours are quite noticeable if you're not wearing a shirt. Wait, what? How does he know about those? I really hope he hasn't been spying on me in the shower or something. Although, some are harder to spot, meaning it's not exactly a reliable way to identify someone with a Zoma at a glance. What do you mean? In your society, there are people who breed between species. This level of diversity has had a profound impact on your collective culture as a whole. Take yourself, for example. Your outward appearance is that of a Doberman, but your skull is different from a normal Doberman's, considering those tusks that are more reminiscent of a boar's. Yeah, I got these from my grandfather, who was a boar. My dad is a Rottweiler and my mother is a Doberman, though. Mothoc looks at you with a puzzled look on his face while you absent-mindedly poke at your tusks. As a byproduct of that melting pot of species and cultures, many different shapes and sizes of people are born, which in turn means different mixtures of patterns, hair, extra body parts, etc. So it's entirely possible that someone with markings is just as easily a hybrid species as they are someone with a Zoma, since the Zoma marks could also just be a fur pattern, or a hair color, or some type of deformity. The only real difference is, while a hybrid's difference could feasibly be removed surgically, or otherwise, the mark of a Zoma user will always grow back. Basically, you could put someone with a Zoma next to someone without, who's mixed species, or even something as simple as having dyed their hair, and it'll be impossible to immediately tell who has the Zoma. For instance, Chad, when I first showed you, I just assumed that your little hair thing was some kind of new hairstyle that you had adopted after 10 years, even though that could have been a tell that you had a Zoma. You having one didn't even cross my mind until I saw your weird little tattoos, though. They do stand out so much that it's pretty hard to deny. But then you could be like me. I don't know if you remember, but I didn't have this orange and yellow streak in my hair back in high school. Oh yeah, I also assumed that it was just a new hairstyle or something. Man, you barely even have to hide that, Lucky. Yeah, it can be something as simple as that. Still, I try to cut it off and dye it or all kinds of stuff, but it always just either grows back or just shows up somewhere else. With all the diversity that we have nowadays, it's basically impossible to determine if someone has a Zoma based on looks alone. Moral of the story is, don't be specious or judge people based on their appearance. That being said, still err on the side of caution, and be ready for anything Doberman. At this point, it's only a matter of time before you encounter the wrong people. Though generally the people who are aware of their Zoma are good about it and keep it hidden away. There will always be the odd shitty person who takes advantage of it, but lately the amount of randos with Zomas have been low. Like Bruce said, it's surprisingly rare for both conditions to be fulfilled by the average Joe. But then again, Dusan wasn't on our radar at all. It's still not confirmed that he has a Zoma, but it's also hard to deny it at this point, based on what you and Kathy have told us. Wait. If I recall correctly, Dusan also had some unique marks in his hair, just like yours, Fred. Same colors and everything. Does he? I haven't actually seen him up close yet. Does that mean that he got influenced by the same person as you? Not necessarily by the same person, but we might share some similarities, yes. Oh, I see. There's a lull in the conversation as you all absorb the information that just got thrown out. It's enough to make your head spin. After a few moments, though, Bruce takes a deep breath and speaks again. I believe that is all for today. Bruce gets up from his seat. If you have any questions, save them for tomorrow. For tonight, think long and hard about everything that you've learned, and try to apply it to what you already know about Zoma, both your own and others that you may know of. Starting tomorrow, I need you to come back here at 11 o'clock. I'll explain some more then, and clear up some confusion that you no doubt still have about those monsters yesterday. Come back to the lodge when you're done. Mothoc, no rush. Evening. Bruce bows his head slightly, then turns and walks back towards his lodge without another word. Bye? Hey, don't look at Give Horse in the mouth. He didn't insult you at all during this whole spiel. We're making big progress. I mean, he wasn't exactly perfectly polite, and he does take talking about Zoma very seriously, but still. Yeah, I noticed. Just give him some time. I'm sure that he'll come around eventually. As long as he's not threatening to break my neck, I guess I can try and work with them. Good. What do you mean, good? Ignoring you, Fred instead turns to Mothoc. Mothoc, I take it that you'll also be joining us for our training sessions? Yes. That's great. I've always wondered about the crazy stuff illusionists can do. Mothoc nods, bouncing around enthusiastically. You wish that you had that kind of energy still. Honestly, it's hard to tell whether you're still exhausted from yesterday or whether the weight of all this new information is draining all of your energy as your brain races to process it. Well then, go get some rest, because starting tomorrow, it's gonna be a bit more challenging. Fred extends his arms, welcoming Mothoc for a hug. Come on, big guy. Mothoc quickly catches the idea and gives Fred a tight, warm hug. The big moth face is positively beaming as he does, clearly very happy that he's getting close to Fred. Once Mothoc lets Fred go, the cheeky shepherd points towards you, a big toothy grin spread across his muzzle. Now it's Chat's turn. Before you get a chance to have any say in the matter, Mothoc is onto you, giving you an equally tight hug with all four arms, even lifting you off the ground a bit. You awkwardly wrap your arms back around him a bit before just giving him a full hug back. He sits you back down and takes a step back, his face still a beacon of precious gleam. Thanks for that, Mothoc. Mothoc applauds and nods happily. We'll see you tomorrow, okay, big guy? Sure. Mothoc turns around and starts making his way to the lodge, waving back at you with two of his hands. Bye, Mothoc. Bye. He continues waving until he is out of sight, leaving you and Fred alone together. Fred lets out a sigh, puts his hands on his hips, and turns to you, a smile still plastered on his face. Well, we should probably head back too. I'm still tired as hell, and I'd probably rather be in tip-top shape for tomorrow. Sounds like a good plan. With nothing else left to do, you both start making your way back down the mountain. About halfway down, a thought crosses your mind. Fred? I think we're gonna have to tell Jenny something, since, we're staying at her place, and I doubt that we're gonna have much time to work at the cafe with all the stuff going on. I already offered to work for her before all this crazy stuff started happening. I can't just be ungrateful prick and backtrack on that. Hey, no worries about that, Chad. We'll talk to her about it tomorrow morning. And I'm fairly sure that she's got the understanding that the cafe stuff is kind of on pause right now anyway. I mean, she's helping us with Dusan too, remember? In her own special Jenny-specific way, yeah. Yep. Remember what I said last night. Just because you have a Zoma doesn't mean that you can't live a normal life. I still need to get to work too, you know? You make it sound so easy. I mean, it kind of is, sure. It's definitely intimidating right now since you're just starting out, but once you get the hang of it, it'll come naturally. Then we can focus on other stuff, like getting your life back together and finding out what happened during those 10 years and all that. Right. Hey, let's make a quick turn here. Fred suddenly sharply turns and you follow him, only needing a few meters to recognize some familiar landmarks. Once you reach a specific spot, you realize, oh no, not this again. You notice a series of upturned roots that Fred had used to surf the tree barks down and out of the forest yesterday. It's the fastest way home that I know of. You'll get used to it. Don't worry. Fred begins to set everything up once again. Still not a fan of it. Come on, Chad, you can't deny that it's fun. I mean, fun is subjective, Fred. Look, you and your semantics. Quit being a baby and hop on. We're probably going to be pretty busy for a while, so let's try to make the most of the free time that we have. We'll go down, finally take a nap, hot shower, and get some real uninterrupted rest. We'll worry about Jenny tomorrow, since she's probably busy now. All right. At least I won't be going through all of this alone. Yeah, no worries, man. I'll be there to help you however I can, and I'm sure Mothoc will be happy to help too. You let out a small sigh and nod as you reluctantly crawl up onto Fred's tree bark surfboard and allow Fred to strap you in with his vines. Yeah, just please don't leave me alone with Bruce. Don't worry, I'm not gonna let him do anything to you anymore. Anyways, ready to get wet and have another shower together? Wait, what? Fred interrupts you by launching you both down the mountain once again. Let's go! Whoa! You once again cling tightly to Fred's legs, holding on for dear life as you speed back home. You try to distract yourself by thinking about what kind of training you're going to have to go through and understanding what your Zoma might be like. But it's too difficult to think straight at the speed you're going, especially with Fred whooping as loud as he is. You apparently didn't learn your lesson yesterday as Fred succeeds in dumping you off the side of the bridge again. You continue to horse around on your way back to the cafe, really enjoying the time that you're spending with him, even if it can be a jerk sometimes. Once you make it back, Fred somehow manages to convince you, with a surprising lack of effort, to take a shower together this time. You spend almost the entire time with your eyes closed or facing away while Fred kept being Fred. The very thought of him knowing how much you liked it was too much embarrassment to bear. Afterwards, you both head out for a late lunch, your heart thankfully able to tolerate that far more easily. When you two get back, stomachs finally full of real food, you take some time to go back over everything Bruce told you with Fred to clear up some confusion you still have. Once it's late enough, you both head to bed to finally get some well-deserved rest. It's hard to deny that what lies ahead is daunting. Nonetheless, you are happy that you don't have to go through it alone like the past few months. This time you have Fred. The same goofy, sweet German shepherd with a heart of gold that holds the honor of being the only one to thoroughly have stolen your heart. You want to say that he's working to steal it again, but did you ever get it back to begin with? Being held by those familiar warm, muscular arms pulled tight to the warmth of his body, you close your eyes and let the peaceful embrace of sleep overtake you. To be continued. Oof. That was a long update. So, we'll be talking about the whole thing. So, at least there is some explanation as to the whole powers thing. And, I guess it kind of makes sense. I also heard the little, reference to Krim from, Heart of Amethyst, so, like, I mean, that makes sense. All friends. I'm curious to see if Chad perhaps, because of his lack of understanding about his whole powers as a whole, look, Jaden, Addo, if perhaps his powers will develop as the story progresses. I mean, assuming they will develop, but if they will become more, like, as he said, like, maybe he can develop more limbs, maybe he can imbue his hands with elements, perhaps he will, maybe he'll be able to use all the elements. That would be interesting. I'm assuming that because of Fred's markings being the same as Bruce's, that perhaps his powers might be related, or at the very least, um, you may be able, or he may be able to get some more help in how to use them from Bruce. Did I say Fred? I meant Bruce. Whatever. Yeah, Bruce, because they have the same like markings, so maybe the powers are related in some way, or at least they stem from the same place. So I'm assuming that might help, you know, Chad be able to control it. Whatever. I'm tired. My throat hurts. Anyways, so what are your thoughts? Write it down in the comments, and thank you all for watching/listening. If you would like to play Home Somewhere Else yourself, you can find it over on itch, and you can find a direct link to it from the Home Somewhere Else Twitter page, which will be linked down in the description, as well as the Patreon link in case you want to support the project and get early access to builds of Home Somewhere Else, as well as some other extra content, like the stories Somewhere Else, which will eventually appear here, which are little like elsewhere stories. Like there's one about what's his name, Toto. Remember the dog from the very beginning of the story, and it's a very not PG-13. Let's just say he gets around with a lot of people. But there's other stories too, like the one that I did for the channel, well, that Zordy had me do for the channel, of Dusan, back when he was still a good guy. Like, you'll find plenty of stories like that. So yeah. Anyways, so I guess that's it for now, and I will see you guys in the next episode. Bye-bye.